In life, we are taught that to live a full life, complete life, we must do our best and learn the skills necessary for us to not only have access or opportunities to get as much of the good things out there, but especially to reduce pain to a minimum. In fact, to do our very best to eliminate pain and suffering, to outsmart pain, and to, at the same time, actually, to make sure that we get the most of what we want, if not all of what we want. And the world will never run out of things to throw in our way, to tease us, to seduce us. Whether it's through the eyes, through the ears, through the nose, through all the other senses, especially the mind. That's the main culprit, because it is always coming up. In fact, if you're sitting there by yourself doing nothing, it finds itself uncomfortable, experiencing discomfort. So it starts to promise itself through you that is to go about to achieve the attainment of these things. While you're sitting there, you might be sitting at the top of Mount Everest. Well, actually, that's a pretty crowded place. Somewhere very quiet, in the desert or something, or in your room. Anywhere where you are by yourself, and it gets bored, the mind, that is, it gets bored, and it wants to add things, imagery come in, because you have a limitless quantity of memories, impressions, perceptions, notions, stories, all of which are geared towards you, the moment you come out of your room, to go ahead and start to regain or gain for yourself as much experiences and things that are possible for you to gain. So we are constantly hoarding different sensations. It's not just like a emotional or mental disorder, hoarders. It's not just that. Everyone is a hoarder in my book, the way I see it, because we're hoarding ideas. We are slaves to our notions, our concepts. And that's what Lord Buddha called wrong view. And there's so many. Wrong views. As opposed to right view. Right view, which is the very first of the Eightfold Path, is the remedy. It doesn't matter how many different wrong views. There's 62 or there's millions. The Buddha gave a certain number in the beginning of the Brahmajala Sutta, the Digha Nikaya, but the long discourses. But that's just a snippet, if you think about it. They have many derivations, many branching out, subdivisions of each. Many, many, many. Depending on the mind that is experiencing it. But the world basically encourages us, teaches us, grooms us to become smart enough, I use the term smart very loosely here, to have access or obtain these things. So life becomes nothing but, or nothing more than, for the average person that is, nothing more than a constant quest to attain the unattainable. Because the world can never give us things that are truly substantial. And by substantial, I mean beyond the mundane. Obtaining things. Even love of a child, if you're a mother, if you're a father. Love of a partner. Love of a country. Love, whatever that is. Love of things, love of weather, poetry, creativity, this and that. They're all slipping through our fingers. And every person knows this. Every person has experienced this. That's why we experience sadness. Tremendous sadness. But we don't have time for that, because remember that mind that comes in when you're bored, sitting, meditating by yourself? All these ideas of, this is what I want to do, this is what I should be doing, this is how I should get that. That's just the mind trying to camouflage the sadness. That's why the person can become a president of a country, his hair falling out, barely able to go up the stairs, incoherent, or rule a country that's so big, there's billions of people in it, so much wealth, unquestionable authority, and they're still not there yet in their mind. They're still hoarding new ideas to safely patch up this leaking wall. And right behind it, there, from all angles actually, if you think of a room, it's four-sided. Up, down, four walls. Life is piercing through. The evidence is overwhelming. Despite all the tricks and things that we have up our sleeves that we use to try to convince us to think otherwise, to feel otherwise. So it's the sadness, that state of discontentness. But it requires a certain level of wisdom to see that and to push your heels into the ground and really, really take it. Take it. See. Because there's that sadness that is the result of me experiencing something that is opposite of what life has been grooming me for. That takes courage. That takes audacity. That is the true identity that we need to be fighting for. Not putting, stickers or whatever, posts, or wearing things that I'm for this. I'm like, yes, I'm for this kind of identification or that, whatever. All nonsense. Because they're all playing into the whole fiasco. They don't touch the real subject. Because the rich, the poor, the this or that, no matter what color skin we have, what gender identifications we have, that's the new thing now. Among other ideologies, yes, that's another one. Political system, yes, I'm this, I'm that. There's always, always, always some type of a dichotomy, some kind of a division, duality, that we seek comfort in. When you're watching, I used to watch sports years and years ago. When I was a teenager, I used to be a fan of the NBA. And I would enjoy how my mind would like to be siding with one of them. Enjoy because it was curious for me to look at my mind as I observed these two groups of people going at each other and trying to score, who's going to have the highest score? Okay, but something interesting happened, because I noticed at times where, let's say, the underdog, the losing team, when they played a little bit better and they started scoring and they got to be even, and I saw how far up they came, how much they had to struggle, all of a sudden I would observe my mind and see how it is switching places. Because I was now siding with the underdogs. Now they are not the underdogs anymore. They are actually beating the other team that now become the underdog. So I was like, oh, look at this flimsy position taking. Like, for me, it's like, oh, so you are unreliable as well. Because I was observing two groups of human beings playing a game, and everybody's like, and I was seeing what it was doing to me, thousands of miles away. I was getting so heated up and so enmeshed in the so-called game, which is anything but a game because it's very serious. For the players, for the audience, and for people who are not even there, watching it through TV. So, these are the tricks of the mind, to have us side with one group versus another, with one to be on this side versus that. And without deviating too much, we need to really be looking carefully at the tricks that the mind engages in to convince us that we're doing something right when it's not, and when we're not. So the MO of the mind is always the way we are taught, the default method of a human being on this planet. A human being, because I didn't see this. I haven't seen this in animals, animal behavior. I haven't seen that. Yes, in captivity, because we're exposing them to unnatural situations. But a human being is to look, to live life, and to gain as much, and to materialize as many of the hoarded ideas and concepts and perceptions that it has, to bring them to fruition. Like, look at Columbus, for example, Christopher Columbus. He has an idea, stemming from, perhaps some people might say, might agree with, conceit and wanting to prove himself, because you had other explorers around the world, so everybody's trying to be somebody. Gain that sense of acceptance, which hasn't changed much, right? Since being a child to being an adult, and now all of a sudden opening up a door to another world and wreaking havoc, changing history in that sense, wreaking havoc on other cultures and everything else that ensued. So we need to be careful with our thoughts, with our mind, and what we are entertaining. Just observe that tendency in us to want to have as much as possible of whatever's out there. And if it's not, go out and get it. That's another thing that we're taught. So we're always getting things. And we have the problem. If we were also that adamant about letting go of things, giving them away, that would be a little bit better, because that would create some type of a flow. You have the front door open, but you also have the back door and the windows open too. The air can come in, the breeze, and go out from the other end. That has an element of generosity in it, I think. So to be able to not be so greedy with entertaining thoughts is really crucial to develop a more serene mind, tranquil mind. So when you're sitting to meditate, observe the distractedness of the mind, the restlessness of it. And on the other extreme, you have dullness and drowsiness, sluggishness, laziness, sleepiness. The sweet spot is in the middle, to see. And that's where also wisdom takes place, to see what is unfolding, how things are, and not be afraid to ask. That is how you're going to be able to see also how you and everyone else has been indoctrinated by the world that we're born into, to go and get more of this, more of this, more of that, more of everything that I want, instead of observing the whole process, which is where the magic happens, if you will. That is what makes a wise person become also silent, because even in their silence, the wise person says so much. Because the mind is restfully placed in that time and space. And then you start to really experience a sense of nobility, being alive in the middle of this chaotic world, in the middle of this circus that's going on in the world. And you're not affected by that. Despite what happens to the body, despite what happens to everything else, all the influences, the people you know that are coming and going, and that has never stopped. And you're also going to go. The body you're going to throw away. But when you're throwing away the body, please make sure that that also is ending the hoarding tendencies, hoarding of perceptions, or in this case, the clingings and the longings and the cravings of more experiences to be had, which is the reason why we have rebirth. If you close your eyes for the last time in this life, and you also close the door on all longings, the way I understand what Lord Buddha teaches is that there won't be to get yourself another rebirth, so that you can re-experience some things, some good things again. Because if you did, then you're back into the cycle of samsara, cycle of rebirths, perpetual, non-stop, and all the suffering that it brings, despite the sweet-tasting tip of the poisonous arrow that every sensual pleasure gives. So it's all about understanding all this process and how it works that we meditate. Because we understand the value of time. So it has everything to do, wisdom has everything to do with understanding and appreciating the time that you have. And as meditators, we truly know how to value time. We don't waste it. Because we don't go out to get more stuff. Even stuff that are, well, sublime in a sense. This experience, this meditative experience, that, because that still gives the mind what it wants. Now, instead of hoarding mundane things, you're hoarding spiritual attainments. Well, what did we learn? Nothing. Because our taste buds have become a little bit more refined. But it's the same nonsense. So even that has to be cut down. with the sharp edge of wisdom. So observe what's going on carefully. Stop hoarding ideas, being slaves to your concepts. So-called identities. Then you start to taste some peace and quiet in your mind.